Well, wow, everybody. And thank you so much, Heather, for just showing us so many wonderful things. I can't wait to hear more and find out what happens next. Meanwhile, we're going to find out how amazing English muffins are made by the famous Gordon Patty at the Model Bakery. Can't wait to explore this level of deliciousness here in Napa. All right. Looking forward, over and out.
One of the things I do want to talk to you a little bit about today is linen. So lots of people say like linens, and it's confusing. And linen is actually made from flax fiber. Our linen is made in Belgium. And it's a long, expensive process, and it's very, very much dependent on how the crops go. So during COVID, we actually had some really bad crop years, and the cost of linen went up 30% per year for 2 years in a row. So the Belgian linen is the best. We weave ours in Italy, and linen is an amazing fiber. It's incredibly breathable. It's aquaphobic and it's aquaphoric, so it'll wick away your moisture and pass it through. And I always tell people, if you have a really humid place you live, if you need a little warmth, sleep with a linen sheet, and then you want to sleep with a cashmere blanket. And so while cashmere, we all think of cashmere in like Scotland and Mongolia, and yes, that's where it's cold. Scotland is actually where they process it the best. But Mongolia grows the best cashmere, and that's because it's coldest, windy, hard to live in, and the cashmere goats have to handle that brutal winter. And so no animals are killed, much like sheep, with cashmere. It's just a seasonal coat. And it's the underhair on their chest of these goats. That's part of the reason it is so expensive, and because they only grow in one specific region for this quality. And people have tried to grow cashmere goats in other parts of the world. It ends up becoming, it's a much, much weaker fiber. They're out there. You'll get cashmere and kind of falls apart. Another thing to be wary of and aware of is that in the United States, something can have 15% cashmere, and it can be called cashmere. So unless it's 100% cashmere, if someone writes 100% finest cashmere, it can mean it's 100% finest. It's very tricky. I learned from Norveger down all about the wording on that. But the basis is you want to look for an incredible source. And cashmere is expensive. So if you're finding cashmere that seems too cheap, it's likely very little cashmere, much like the Giza 87. If you see a set of sheets of Giza 87 and they're under $2,000, it has very little Giza 87 cotton in it. Cashmere breathes incredibly well. It's actually a great thing to have in humid weather. So if you sleep with a linen sheet and a cashmere blanket in a place like Hawaii, you're going to wake up feeling better than if you're sleeping with a cotton blanket, because cotton is aquaphoric and holds all the water. So you wake up feeling really, wet. I know, we've all been there. If you've been to Hawaii and you've slept in cotton sheets with a cotton blanket, that is part of what goes on. So with linen, they're not all created equal. There's super fine Belgian linens, and then there's like heavier linens that are good for duvets. And here is one, and you can see this, and you can see how it hangs differently than the cotton. The cotton has it's a little crispier of a drape, and of course it wrinkles. And Germans have a fabulous saying called "linen wrinkles nobly." And one of my clients and friends, Christopher Murphy, who's a sound engineer expert, figured something out about the fibers. You can tell by fiber qualities by two things. One is how it sounds. So if you have a substandard linen and you kind of pull on it, it has a higher pitch, and the stronger and better the fibers are, it actually has a lower sound. So it's a really fun test. It's a very good science test. The other thing is, if you take a cheap piece of linen and you mush it up in your hand, right? You can really, really squish it, and you open it, that cheap linen will literally stay in a ball. And this is not cheap linen, and see, it already has started to undo itself. So One thing to keep in mind, linen is great for hot climates, and we have one called Charlotte air tumbled, this huge room where it air tumbles the linens for, it takes years off the life of the linen. And what used to happen was the nobles in England would have their staff sleep on their linen sheets for 20 years before they moved into the families and guest bedrooms. And that was to wear them out and bring out the sheen. And it sounds creepy to us modernly, but our body oils combine really well with the linen. And over time, it actually creates a finer fiber and a softer fiber to sleep on. So what we've done with this machine is speed up the process of that aging. And so the Charlotte air tumbled linen is fantastic, and it's one of our best sellers. This is just the Charlotte. And I don't mean to say just, but it's a little crispier. And we have lots of men that want to order our Jennifer. And our Jennifer is too rough for most women. And one of the things I always tell these guys are you going to have women sleeping at your house? Because women have 4 times thinner skin than men. And so it actually, something that can feel nice and soft to a man can be very harsh to a woman's skin. So a little tidbit to keep in mind as you're designing your bachelor pads or guest rooms for your house or whatever, but always a fun thing to teach people. And we have lots of these beautiful things. One of my favorite things are the jacquards that we have done over time. This one is called Cynthia Scroll, and you can see it's an acanthus sort of scroll. It's done in our Belgian linen. It's woven in Italy yet again, and it's got a nice crisp weight. It's a fabulous duvet cover, pillow shams, and this one's been folded a long time, but it looks really great and is very durable as a duvet cover, and hides the wrinkles because of its pattern. I originally designed this fabric in a beautiful olive for a house in Orange County that was completely designed around the best Georgian dining table I have ever seen. It was original. It had been in her family since it was made, and it had been brought over to this house I think it was in Dana Point. They flew me down, and we designed the fabric, we designed all of the cutting, and we did 3 different kinds of napkins out of this. We templated the table. It had an inner bump lining for the tablecloths. We did 3 sets of tablecloths, and it was just a totally cool experience. And the woman who owned the house was named Cynthia. So that's why this is called Cynthia Scroll. So that was very fun. So I do get flown around to go to projects and work with clients or designers. We have some other fun things. This one is currently named the Nantucket Collection. And as you can see, it has abstracted rays of the sun here. And I wanted something that, we call it Soleil, and I wanted something that was elegant and contemporary, but not too busy. And so often things are a little more comical or they're a little too fluffy. And I wanted something that could be appreciated by all sorts of people in all sorts of settings. And it's only done in white, but it looks great against the navy. It looks great against the white. And so that's a lot of fun. That's another jacquard. So the jacquard loom is another super cool thing. And I love sharing the videos of the machines in Italy, but it's hard to even share the magnitude of them. Video doesn't pull it off. I mean, when they load the warp beam, so the warp beam is this huge tube that gets loaded onto these giant jacquard machines, and it takes 24,000 threads to get loaded onto the warp beam. And it's almost always women, and it goes back centuries that women have finer touch and feeling on their fingertips, so they can spin threads back together at a very rapid, careful pace. So if one of those 24,000 threads that's being loaded on there breaks, she stops the machine, she finds the thread, she pulls it back together, she twists it together with her fingers, turns the machine back on. And it is an insane engineering feat. I must say textiles touches my heart of engineering all the time because of just how amazing this is and how many centuries this technology goes back. I mean, you look at passementerie and trim, those cords are still made with a rudimentary machine that Leonardo da Vinci invented. And if you look at how they spin the silks and all these things, just look up textile inventions and how old they are, and they're barely changed, except for when it gets to the massive machinery. And I don't know how many of you know, but the jacquard loom was where punch cards were invented, which is the beginning of computers. So textiles is a very important role for all of us. One of the coolest machines I have ever seen makes our towels. And when I was starting and I wanted to add towels to our line, I kept changing the design, and I had all these jacquards, and I was like, I want this, I want this, I want that. And they finally said, I was doing it in Belgium, and they finally said, will you please come here so we can show you the machine so you can understand what you're asking us. And I was like, oh, okay. And it is incredible. They first have to load the threads. It goes around this room, like around the bend. I mean, this is after everything's spun. First you have to pick the cotton, then it's spun, then it's put into these amazing machines, and it comes around, and then it goes around, and then it's loaded into these machines. And there's various machines for terry, but this particular one is a looped terry on both sides. It is called Lugano. It's our heavier now. We used to do much heavier towels, and people have gotten more practical with A, they're just heavy, B, they take forever to dry, and with how energy conscious the planet is becoming, you don't want towels that take ages to dry. One little secret on that is if you throw a dry towel in with a bunch of wet towels, the towels dry faster. It's very cool. Little handy secret. This one is our lightest weight, and it's actually become our best seller, and it's called Sardinia. And we always recommend to every client that when they're ordering their towels, they get a dozen black washcloths, because as we all know, when you take makeup off, no matter how well you take it off, when you wash your face, mascara and lipstick come off on your washcloths. So Sardinia comes in about 14 colors for us. The Lugano comes in more, and then we have this incredible one that I don't even know if I have sent. Oh, it's in here. My favorite is called Positano, and named thus because I love Positano. And so I did them geographically by which one was warmer. So Lugano's the cold northern Italy, so it's the heavier terry. Positano's in the middle. And you can see here lined up really well the three qualities of the terry. And you can see here the Lugano is like a fluffier weight, but it's still not those heavy towels of the early 2000s. But my favorite is the Positano. And on one side, it's cut velvet, it's cut pile, and the other side, it's looped. My family the Kearsley family in Lancashire and Yorkshire were very specialized at one point in time in velvets. And velvets were an incredibly important fabric and only allowed for the aristocracy, and in certain colors only allowed for certain aristocracy. And so why I did this is if you've ever sat on a pool towel in your bathing suit, you get up and you have little lumps from the looped terry. So we did a cut pile velvet. So this is really the one that I recommend for pool towels, or the sun pads on boats, or if you're gonna have a slip cover for a little stool in your bathroom or whatever. This is a really beautiful fabric. It's also a great one for terry robes because you want the cut pile. I would put the cut pile on the inside personally, but that's a personal preference. So those are some of the neat things. One of the things I wanted to show you here in my little box of tricks is these are some of the embroidery floss colors that we use. So there's lots to play with between all of the colors that we weave and then all of the colors you can embroider. And so if you want to see that, it's really fun. We use Aurifil, and we've had a lot of fun with these variegated threads here at the end. You can see they kind of change as they go, and you have to do what's called a strike off. So a strike off is when we design the embroidery, then we do a digital rendering of it, and then we'll do a strike off, which is one set of that embroidery in that color so that we can get approvals. And often at that point, First, when we get the digital rendering, I have to make notes. Then it gets to the point where I can send it to the clients. Then the clients approve it. Then we do the strike off. Then the clients, sometimes depending on the shortness of schedule, will approve a photograph of the strike off. Other times we'll ship it over from Italy. It's a price difference, and we can lose 5 days in the process. Generally, if you're going to make bespoke linens, it's best to bring us in at least 6 months in advance. If you're going to be involved custom weaving, which happens especially with our cashmere often, we weave 40 meter minimums in Scotland, 300 meter minimums in Italy, but it's wider format. So we have 103-inch wide cashmere. That's how we're able to make our full blankets for our bed, and all that good stuff. And this is just heavenly. I mean, who doesn't want to cuddle up in a cashmere blanket, right? And so my go-to buddy all time, anyone who knows me has seen one of my ponchos. So we sell these on our website, and this is the Kearsley poncho. And I originally designed it, and my mom made it for me, for traveling. So it is the best thing on the airplane, and we have sold them to men and women. And as you can see, now it's gotten way more fancy. We have pockets for your cell phone and whatever, your lipstick, your tissue. And these are just great. And during COVID, when you had to eat outside all the time, just throw one of these. They go over anything. And one of the things is if you have 3/4 sleeves or fluffy sleeves and you can't put a jacket over it, this is a great solution. We sell them in, 12 colorways on the website. And I think 12 colorways on the website, and we can do them custom as well. As with the sheets, if you're going to do a custom that we don't normally do, it's a 2 poncho minimum. We can do your monogram on here or whatever you like. Most people tend to like the Kearsley knot, which is actually one of my favorite things. It's not a Celtic knot. It's 4 hearts, if you look at it, and a kiss through it with a little loop-de-loop. And again, it was another one of my doodles, and it's part of a greater jacquard pattern, which we'll be turning out, and this is our trademarked Torquil knot. And I designed it with one of my friend Torquil's family castles in mind in Scotland, and so hence the name. Many things are just named after our friends and clients, and it's a lot of fun. So I think that's it for right now. So thank you for joining me today for a little lesson on linens and some of the things that go into them, and look forward to more time with you.
Heather, thank you so much for coming and giving us all this beautiful knowledge on all this amazing textiles and all the experiences you've had from around the world and sharing it with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
So awesome, so epic. It's just,
I know, now you get to feel it.
So amazing, right?
Well, and then they feel different in different colors. And these are not dyed.
Right.
These are the colors. They separate out 7 colors for us of the different colors of cashmere. So these are undyed cashmere. That's why they're so heavenly.
Thank you so much for coming out today and sharing with us and giving us some knowledge on all this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. And then the rest of you guys, see you next week.
My name is Gordon Patty. I work here in Model Bakery. I've been baking for about 10 years. Today I'm going to show you how to make our world-famous English muffins. From basically our kitchen to your plate, wherever that may be. To cook them, you're going to need clarified butter, a nice, good cast iron pot or skillet, and a little thyme. For our English muffins, we use bread flour, water, yeast, salt, and olive oil. Here we use bread flour. It gives us the right kind of strength we need. At home, you might want to experiment between bread flour and all-purpose, depending on what your results are. Every flour all around the country is all a little bit different, and really you need to test it at home to get the best results. All right, now we have the old dough. In the recipe in the book, we use Giza. Here we're going to use an old dough, because that's what we use every day here. And we need 0.9, and that'll give us about 20% pre-ferment to our 4.5 pounds of flour. First off, we're going to start with the flour. today we're going to be doing 4 times the recipe that is in the book, just so it's nice and big and we can see what we're doing. In professional baking, we scale most everything because weight is a much more accurate unit of measure than volume. That pounds right there, and that's the flour. Here's the yeast. Just 0.03 of that. Now we're going to do the salt. We want 0.18 of the oil. Our ingredients are the flour, water, salt, yeast, oil, and old dough. And now we're going to start mixing. The oil is going to come in later as the dough is developing. That way the oil doesn't interfere with the gluten that's produced when you're mixing the flour. Depending on if the flour is well hydrated, strong, or weak in protein, flour will take a different amount of water each and every time you mix it. If everything is about room temperature, you might want to use cooler or tap water. If everything is really hot, say it's the summertime, you're going to want to use just a little bit of ice. I'd say maybe 10 to 20% of your actual water weight. You want to hold back a little bit of the water. It's a lot easier to add than take away as far as water goes. Next we add the salt. Then we add all the water and the yeast. Not quite all of it, we're going to hold some back. Add all the water. And that's where we'll start the mix. And now we start mixing. We're going to check it and see how it feels. Yeah, it's just about right. And switch to the dough hook. And this is how we'll finish it. When it's come to the right point, we're going to add the oil. So right at about 67, 68 is what I wanted. And right now, we're right here at 68. So I'm done. Once you have solid gluten development and the dough is almost finished, almost smooth when you're doing a window pane test, that's when you want to add the oil, just on speed 1, nice and slow, until everything comes back together, gets nice and strong and velvety smooth. Looks like we do, and that's where we'll call finished English muffin dough. We're going to take this and put it into a nice oiled bowl so it doesn't stick too badly, and we're going to leave it for an hour and a half, 2 hours, until it's about doubled in size. It might take a little longer, might be a little shorter than that, just depends on how warm or cool it is. And we're going to take that, divide that into pieces about 3 ounces. Here's our dough. We transfer this to an oiled bowl, let it sit for 1.5 to 2 hours until it's about doubled in size. At that point, we're going to transfer it back to a table with flour and divide it and roll it. When you're all done shaping the English muffins, it's going to go into a bed of cornmeal where it'll sit for 2 to 3 hours depending on temperature and conditions. What that does is it allows the cornmeal to really bond to the English muffin. So when it cooks, it just solidifies on there and gives you a nice crispy not roasted, fried corn outside. Really the best part of the English muffin. All right, so here we are in the middle of the process. What I'm doing here is I'm scaling out 6.5 pound bunches or presses to go into our machine and start the rounding process. It doesn't do all the work for us, it just takes a nice little piece out of it. Every other piece is then finished by hand. Is the correct consistency, not too sticky, not too dry. And then it also has to be very level and rounded. Every homemaker should have one of these machines. And then we take the pieces and we just round them out. We finish rounding them just by tightening them up a bit and making sure that they're actually equal size and round. Unlike a lot of things in the bakery, this is griddled instead of baked in clarified butter, and that will come at the very end. Yeast, much like beer yeast, creates esters and flavors. The only real difference between bread yeast and beer yeast is bread yeast has been bred to, literally bred, to have a few of the less esters. Here we're filling up the griddles with clarified butter, and then we're going to light all the burners once we make sure everything's nice and level, so we get nice level cooking area, so we have an equal amount of butter all the way across the griddle. It'll take about half hour, 45 minutes of just heat on here to get these up to cooking temperature, which is right around, I want to venture to say, about 450 degrees. As far as the muffin tops go, as soon as they're cool enough to put in your mouth, just go for it about anything. But for the most part, one of the nice things about being in Napa Valley in a place that's so customary to food and really knows what's going on is that some of the complaints that you might get in other places don't nearly exist here because people know what artisan means and what artisan bread is. That it's made by hand, and every day it's a little bit different because if it wasn't, it wouldn't really be artisan, now would it? They're just gonna go right onto a rack. I hope everything has been a great help to you, and whatever you choose to bake from our wonderful book, whether it be the English muffins, the chocolate rads, or some of the pan levain, which I highly recommend. I hope this has all been very helpful, and you have a really great time. Eat, drink, and be merry, and enjoy yourself. And from our kitchen to yours, happy baking.